What happens when a $5 billion experiment starts running out of rope? That is the question sitting at the center of professional golf right now, and the answer is becoming harder to ignore with every passing. Two major stories are unfolding simultaneously, and together they are pointing toward a turning point that could permanently reshape the sport. On one side, LIV Golf has just postponed a major tournament under circumstances that directly contradict what its own leadership said publicly just 2 weeks ago. On the other, the players most likely to need an exit from LIV are discovering that the door back to the PGA Tour may not be open the way they assume. These are not separate stories. They are two parts of the same unraveling. LIV Golf's scheduled tournament at Bayou Oaks at City Park in New Orleans, set for June 25th to 28th, has been postponed. The official explanation, delivered through a joint statement from Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry and Economic Development Secretary Susan Bourgeois, cited a desire to explore a fall date instead. LIV Golf framed it as a strategic move, stating, "This shift allows us to avoid the peak summer heat and the crowded global sport calendar while ensuring the course is in the championship condition our players expect." That explanation, on its own, might sound reasonable, but the timing makes it nearly impossible to accept at face value. Less than 2 weeks before this announcement, LIV Golf CEO Scott O'Neil sent a direct message to staff and players insisting the 2026 season continues exactly as planned, uninterrupted and at full throttle. Then, in a broadcast interview during LIV's tournament in Mexico City that same week, O'Neil said something that told a very different story. "The reality is you're funded through the season, and then you work like crazy as a business, create a business and a business plan to keep us going." That clip was later deleted from social media. 2 weeks later, a major event is gone from the schedule. Those two statements cannot coexist, and one of them was clearly misleading. The financial damage to the state of Louisiana is real. Louisiana had committed approximately $7 million total to bring LIV Golf to New Orleans. Of that, $2 million had already been spent on course upgrades at Bayou. Governor Landry confirmed that LIV agreed to return $1.2 million it had already received, and that it was no longer eligible to collect the remaining $4 million. The $2 million in infrastructure improvements, however, is not coming back. Landry framed those funds as improvements that remain in place for the community, which is accurate, but it also means public money has been spent on a tournament that is no longer happening on schedule, with no guarantee it happens at all. We appreciate LIV's good faith efforts and look forward to maintaining our partnership as we continue conversations around an event later this. The joint statement. That language is diplomatic, but Louisiana taxpayers are left holding the consequences of a deal that fell. The scheduling damage extends beyond just one state. With the New Orleans event gone, LIV Golf now has no tournaments in the United States between Virginia, May 7th to 10th, and Bedminster, New Jersey, August 6th to 9th, a gap of nearly 3 months without a single American. There's also a 46-day window between the Spain event on June 7th and the United Kingdom stop on July 23rd, with no tournament anywhere on the calendar. LIV has pointed to the FIFA World Cup running from June 11th to July 19th across the United States, Canada, and Mexico as a reason for the timing conflict. But that raises an obvious question. The World Cup schedule was publicly announced long before LIV booked a June date in New Orleans. Why wasn't this considered then? The answer likely has less to do with soccer and more to do with the Saudi public investment. Earlier this month, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince and PAF Chairman Mohammed bin Salman approved a new 5-year strategic plan for the sovereign wealth. That plan focused on domestic investment priority. It did not mention LIV Golf. The PF has reportedly invested more than $5 billion in LIV since the league launched 2022, burning through approximately $100 million. O'Neil himself acknowledged earlier this year that LIV could be another decade away from profit, compounding everything. The ongoing conflict involving Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has cut Saudi oil exports significantly, placing real financial pressure on the kingdom's resource. The money that seemed unlimited is no longer flowing the same. PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolap was asked about LIV's situation on the Pat McAfee show, and his response was deliberately measured. "We are reading the same headlines as you. We do not know exactly what is going on." That careful phrasing is itself a signal. The PGA Tour is not panicking. It is watching a rival deal with a crisis and considering its options with patience. The most instructive recent event in this conversation is the return of Brooks Koepka. In January 2026, Koepka became the first player to come back to the PGA Tour through the newly created returning member program. He was out of contract with LIV, reached out to the PGA Tour himself, and accepted terms that Rohlap described as one of the largest financial repercussions in professional sports history. Those terms included a $5 million charitable donation, forfeiture of all potential player equity for 5 years, estimated at $50 to $85 million in potential value, and no eligibility for the $100 million FedEx Cup bonus program 2026. Koepka acknowledged the weight of those conditions directly. It's meant to hurt. It does hurt, but I understand. It's not supposed to be an easy path. The returning member program window is now closed. Rohlap was explicit when it launched. This is a one-time, defined window and is not a precedent future. Once the door closes, there is no promise that this path will be available. With LIV's financial footing crumbling, the two biggest names still under contract with the league, Bryson DeChambeau and Rahm, are the subject of growing speculation about potential returns to the PGA Tour. Both are major champions. Both are among the best players. On paper, the PGA Tour should be eager to have him back, but that is not what is happening behind the scenes. Recent conversations with multiple people familiar with the PGA Tour's internal dynamics, in locker rooms and at leadership level, make clear that Brian Rohlap would face stiff opposition from players if he tried to clear a smooth path back for either DeChambeau or Rahm. The sentiment is not neutral. It is actively cold. Rahm's departure to LIV hardened attitude among PGA Tour players for a specific reason. Many of them cannot stomach the idea of Rahm returning, pockets full of Saudi money, and then positioning himself as someone who helped bring the sport back to. Players don't want to hand him that name. DeChambeau's situation carries different weight. He has always been a polarizing figure, but his decision to sign on a LIV's antitrust lawsuit against the PGA Tour is the issue that has genuinely damaged his stand. PGA Tour members had to personally contribute to the legal costs of defending that lawsuit. It was eventually dismissed, but the resentment it produced has not faded. A source familiar with the tour's current mood put it plainly. There was respect and enthusiasm for Koepka, maybe less respect for Reed, but understanding that his path was different and respect that he was willing to earn that path. This will be a much more difficult path back because of the changed circumstances and the suit by Bryson. The bar is much higher this. The contrast with Koepka matters enormously. Koepka was well liked in the locker room. He was not seen as an LIV advocate or ideological true believer. His move was read as opportunistic. And critically, when Koepka returned, the PGA Tour still believed, based on repeated assurances from O'Neil, that LIV was funded 2030. That belief is now gone. The market has shifted completely. If DeChambeau or Rahm attempt to return now, insiders say it will be perceived not as a choice, but as desperation, the result of Saudi money drying up, not genuine desire to compete on the PGA Tour. That perception changes everything about the terms they would face. The conditions offered to Koepka 4 months ago, before the PIF signaled its withdrawal, would likely look generous compared to what comes. The prevailing attitude among PGA Tour members was summarized bluntly by one insider. We have 95% of the best players, and we can live without the other 5%. Rohlap has publicly said he wants all of the world's best players competing on the PGA Tour, particularly as the organization heads into what it hopes will be a lucrative new media rights negotiation. But Rohlap answers to players and investors, and neither group is currently pushing for a reconciliation. Another insider framed the stakes with withering clarity. Golf immortality is achieved by winning majors, PGA Tour events. You're not going to achieve immortality by hitting golf balls over your garage. When LIV Golf launched in 2022 with what appeared to be unlimited Saudi backing, the PGA Tour had to react defensively, raising purses, creating signature events, restructuring player compensation. The power dynamic forced the PGA Tour to compete. That dynamic no longer exists. LIV players now need exits. The PGA Tour controls the exits. Host states are requesting refunds. Sponsors are watching carefully. And the PGA Tour's upcoming media rights negotiation just became significantly easier to win when the alternative league is pulling events off its own schedule. The returning member program window is closed. Cameron Smith, who won the 2022 Players' Championship and the Open Champion, remains eligible under the program's criteria, and his next move is one of the most closely watched developments in the sport. DeChambeau is reportedly in the final year of his LIV contract. Whether that contract expires quietly or creates a public confrontation is an open question. What LIV looks like without PIF backing, fewer events, smaller fields, or no league at all remains genuinely uncertain. What is no longer uncertain is where the leverage sits. LIV built its power entirely on Saudi. That money is leaving. And the PGA Tour, for the first time since this divide began in 2022, is in a position to set every term of whatever comes next.